Alright folks, welcome to Premium Fuel Magazine. Today we're going to shift gears a little bit from our usual content. We're going to talk about electric longboards. So for those of you all who may be joining this channel for the first time, this is actually not a skate channel. This is an automotive DIY channel. So if you like what you see, I invite you to click around, check out a few more videos. You may enjoy the content. For my regular viewers, if you happen to be watching this video, this is actually not going to be completely off topic. This is actually a tool that I use every time I go to the racetrack. This is something I bring with me, and I want to show it to you guys, and I want to talk about it a little bit because this is starting to become a bigger hobby for me. And just like everything else, I want to share what I've learned with you guys. Today we're going to be talking about the Halo Beast board. Now the Beast is actually my second electric longboard, and we'll back it up for a second just to kind of qualify myself as to why I'm riding around here on electric longboards. To be perfectly honest, as a kid I was never into skateboarding. I was never good at it, never learned how to ollie, never learned how to do tricks, and all my friends were doing that stuff, and I basically moved on to other things that I was better at. I did get into skateboarding briefly while I was in college. I had a lot of fun with it, but again, I moved on to other things. I've never liked snowboarding. I'm not good at it. I much prefer skiing. So that's basically my background and where I came from. So the way I actually got into electric longboarding is basically going to racetracks and things like that. A lot of people that spend a lot of time at racetracks buy things called pit bikes, which are like little miniature motorcycles. They take gasoline. I just can't transport a pit bike, and I can't put it in my car. I don't have a pickup truck, and my trailer is too small to take my car and a pit bike, so that's not really an option for me. Plus, I don't want to keep a pit bike around my house, and if you drive it on the street, people will just lose their minds and they'll call the police on you, and it's just not worth the trouble. So I'm not really interested in having a pit bike. So I wanted something that I could put in my car, pull out, it's ready to go anytime, don't have to worry about gas and oil and fumes and things like that. Also, for this type of vehicle, I wanted something that was going to help me to bypass parking and become more mobile in the city. So I used to work in the District of Columbia, Washington, D.C., and parking is very, very expensive. So I was looking for ways of basically parking my car somewhere free and basically riding my board into work, which I never got to do, but that concept right there is basically called last mile transport, where you basically get close enough to something to where you need to get that last mile or so. I like riding the bike a lot. Bike racks are not out of the option, but I didn't want to be riding a bike into work and show up to work sweaty, and you know, I wanted something easier. So that's where I started looking into PEVs, or personal electric vehicles. After a lot of looking, I got into electric longboards, and I decided that that was the vehicle for me. So for 2 years I've been actually riding a Halo board. It's the Halo Board 2, and honestly I really liked that board. I didn't have any complaints about it. It had good range, it had great speed, but I was always afraid of crashing that board. It's a very easy board to ride, especially somebody of my experience. I hopped on the board day one. The third time I had the thing up and down the street, I actually maxed it out at 24 miles an hour. But like I said, I was always afraid of crashing that board. The wheels are smallish. They're not small, but they're, you know, it doesn't handle bumps real well. So if I was to get snagged up on an uneven sidewalk, or if there's a rock in my path or something, I would have wrecked out, and that's just not good. So at the time that board had come out, there weren't a lot of options. That was a top of the line board at the time, but that board came out probably 4 years ago from the time of making this video. So a lot has changed since then. There's a lot of options these days, and basically what I wanted in a newer board was something with bigger wheels that could take bigger obstacles and not be thrown off so much by imperfections in the road. So after a lot of looking, I looked at one wheel devices. Those looked cool, but you know, after a lot of looking and research, I decided on getting the Halo 2 board with the 120 millimeter cloud wheels. Now in my opinion, the cloud wheels aren't the greatest thing in the world, but these are probably the most versatile wheels that you can get. They're pretty large. They're very efficient because they're not too big. They're wide, you have good traction, and they're good enough to get over most of the obstacles that you're going to experience. Now if you're going to do a lot of off-road, there's better options. If you're going to do strictly on-road and you have good pavement, there's other better options. But this right here, in my opinion, is probably the most versatile wheel that you can get. But this isn't a review on the Cloud wheels. I put these here on this board, and we'll talk about why it looks like this in a minute. But while we're on the topic of looks, looks is something that's very important to me, and a lot of my decisions on these boards and stuff that I buy is based on looks, and this is a really great looking board. Just to let you guys know, this is actually my third attempt at filming this video. I'm not a skateboard reviewer. I've got this whole outline of things that I wanted to talk about, but I'm just going to ignore that for now. And I'm just going to talk about the key features that that I find to be important. So I'm going to talk about what I like about this board, what I dislike about this board, and what I've learned from owning this board, with this being my second board. So first of all, I like carbon fiber. I'll buy anything with carbon fiber on it. So even though this isn't a carbon fiber board, it has the carbon fiber casing on there. I think that's very attractive. The deck is a maple / fiberglass deck. It's not the most flexible deck in the world. Sometimes you'll see people with these maple decks trying to bounce on them like it's a bamboo deck. That's a really bad idea because you will break these things. It's not made to be super flexy. You know, it flexes a little bit, and it makes for a very, very nice ride. But this isn't a super flexy board. You don't want to do that. You don't bounce on these things. It's not a springy board, so don't do that. This unit right here has the double kingpin trucks, and this board in particular, and again, I'll back up for a moment. There's a couple of other boards on the market that are basically clones of this board, or this board may be a clone of them. One in particular is the Onsra Black Carve board, which I looked at, but I decided to just go with the Halo since I already had a Halo board. But I think, honestly, this is probably identical to the Onsra Black Carve. And as the name would suggest, this is a very carvy board with your double kingpin trucks. So I did mess with the bushings a little bit. I put riptide bushings in it from another board. I kind of mix and match them a little bit. Apparently, I can't confirm this, but I believe that this board comes with 100A bushings already in it, which is pretty much like the hardest bushings that you can get. And honestly, they are very soft and squishy on this board. This is a very loosely set up board. Those terms may sound negative. It's not really a negative thing. That's just a characteristic of the board. I mean, all the screws are down tight and everything. Yeah, that's a good thing. But this board is a very, very maneuverable, very agile board. Now that's a plus if you like carving, because you can carve very well on this board. Like I said, it's very agile. You can turn very sharp. It's very fun to ride. But on the negative end, top speed wise, once you get over 20 miles an hour on this board, you can wreck out instantly with almost no warning. You get bad speed wobbles on this thing just because of how flexible these bushings are right here. If you hit a bump, if you go to shift your foot, you know, you can end up in a really bad way. So my first time actually on this board, you know, it was pitch black at night. You know, the UPS truck had just dropped it off, and I was excited to go riding. And I decided to just go bombing down the street, the dark street in this thing. And coming down a hill, and I went to shift my feet, and I was going over 20 miles an hour, and that's when the speed wobble happened. This thing pitched sideways, and it bucked me off like a motorcycle, and I went flying. And I really could have killed myself if I hadn't landed on my feet and basically slid to a stop on my feet. My whole body hurt after that, but honestly, I could have died from that. So from that instance alone, I've learned you've got to absolutely always wear a helmet at the very minimum. Always wear a helmet when you're riding one of these things. Knee pads, elbow pads. I have this little cheap motorcycle armor suit. All of this stuff is a very good idea when you're riding these boards. Speaking of another crash story with this board, the previous owner of this board actually crashed this board and actually decided he was never going to ride it again. And that's how I got it. He actually gave me a really good price, so I appreciate you, Joe Grain, for giving me a good price. He crashed this board because allegedly the screws backed out on him and the front truck came loose, and he had a pretty bad wipeout on this board. So if you watch Joe Grain's videos, he gave this board a really good review at first, and then he came back and he gave it a really bad review, and he decided he would never ride it again. Now that's absolutely his prerogative, and his safety is his priority, and he absolutely made the right decision if he didn't feel like what he was doing was safe. However, you should always do a nut and bolt check on any board or car, anything that you're in. Nut and bolt issues are fairly common on any of these boards. You always have to check that your trucks are tight and that your battery tray is tight, that your wheels are tight. That's just a thing that you have to do. So he went ahead and replaced it with better screws. I'm actually going to go ahead and pull these screws out and replace this with bigger screws. I think this is probably like an M3 on here now. I'm going to replace these with M5 screws, and I'm actually going to drill through the deck. That's another flaw that these boards have, and I believe Onsra actually sells a kit to replace those screws with. But nut and bolt wise, make sure that your nuts and bolts are tight. That's just something that you got to do when you ride these boards. Motor and power wise, this board comes with the direct drive motors. I used to be a big fan of hub motors, just reading about them on paper, and my only board was a hub motor. I thought that was the greatest thing in the world. Direct drives are cool because it gives you more wheel options. So you can just buy a regular set of wheels, you know, a regular set of e-skateboard wheels, and you can put basically any wheels on here that you want, as long as you use the correct adapters. Downside of your direct drive motors is wheel clearance from the ground. So these things will tend to get a little bit banged up depending on what type of terrain you're driving over, but that just comes with the territory. I believe that these sleeves are actually replaceable, but that's just going to be wear and tear on your board. The benefit of using any wheel that you want is you just get a better ride when you have better wheels and you don't have those hub motor sleeves. Hub motors have a pretty harsh ride. And then your belt drive boards, you have belt maintenance to worry about and other things like that. Belt boards aren't the worst thing in the world, but they're not as efficient. I can actually, if I ran out of power in this board, I could actually still kick and push this board like a regular skateboard, because these things don't have very much resistance when you just freewheel them. So that's a plus. The downside, another downside of the hub motors is they don't get as much torque as a belt driven board, because this is always a 1-to-1 ratio. Your belt boards, you can control the ratios, and obviously when you're changing ratios you have a torque multiplication. So having said that, this board is not the hardest accelerating board out there, but you're not gonna be drag racing on these things and you don't need extreme acceleration. Well, I mean, it does get moving, and it's not like you're going to sit there and be disappointed in the acceleration in this board, because it still gets moving. It just doesn't get moving as quickly as a belt-driven board. Also, I have these big tires on here. Now, I did drive this board with the original tires on there, and I don't feel like there was very much of a difference. And I also feel like this board may be tuned to accelerate the way that it does, just to reduce wear and tear on the electronics. So that's a good thing. Now, as far as this being an all-terrain board, because I know people like to get these big wheels and try to drive these things off-road, this board will handle short, medium-sized grass, dirt paths, you know, minor imperfections in the pavement. It's pretty decent. I actually took this board off-road on a bike trail to show how bad it would do, and it actually did really well, surprisingly. I had a lot of fun, and I'll probably take this board off-road again. It did struggle going up hills off-road, and going off-road with this board absolutely murdered the battery. So, I mean, you could probably do 30 minutes of trail riding with this board if you have elevation changes, whereas the normal range on this board is something like 25 miles. So that's going to be a major disadvantage. You also don't want to go riding through grass a lot on these boards, just because these boards aren't really made for that, even though they're advertised for that. It's a lot of wear and tear on the electronics. You can overheat things, you can burn things up. So these boards are meant for pavement, so use them on pavement and go through all terrain, you know, if you have to, you know, or short distances. So this part may be jammed in here randomly because I decided to film it at the end because I kind of skipped over it. But one thing about the Halo board is this is the standard remote that it comes with. And honestly, I think that this remote is garbage. This is like a standard Hobbywing remote. And I think that this would come with a board, like a DIY board that you would build if you were trying to save money. And for what this thing cost, brand new, you shouldn't be getting something like this. This is the upgraded remote. I think they may ship this one standard with the board now, but the upgrade remote is a lot better. It has your standard LCD display with your speed and odometer on it and everything like that. It allows you to do your speed modes, which I never use. I just turn it on mode number 3 all the time. It's got the same wheel on it for acceleration and braking, which the brakes on this board are also very good. It's got like a very intelligent brake feature that almost acts like an ABS. It slows you down gradually versus like abruptly just slamming on the brakes and throwing you off. So that's really cool. But back to the remote. It's very ergonomic when you hold it in your right hand. But the thing is, as I've been harping on throughout this video, is you got to wear your safety gear, guys. And when you put gloves on, you can't put your finger through that hole. So then you got to hold it down here, and it's kind of awkward. It doesn't work the way it's supposed to. And then if you're left-handed, you're going to have to hold it like this, and then you can't see anything. So I don't know about this remote. I mean, it worked good enough for me, but honestly, all the rest of the remotes in the game basically look like this and have a screen on them. And I think that they would have been better off with the standard unit that looks like this with a screen on it. The deck of this board, honestly, again, I think it's a great looking deck. I love the hexagonal tape that they put on this thing. You can see where Joe spray painted this thing after he decided he was not going to drive it anymore. And in the process of me trying to fix that, I removed the logo. But you can still see it on there a little bit, so I'm going to leave it like this. But anyways, the deck is a really wide deck. This is actually, of my 3 boards that I have, this is actually my most comfortable deck to ride on. It's slightly concave, it's really wide on the sides, and honestly, it just really feels like my feet are made to be on this board. This is a really, really comfortable board to ride. And as you can see, it's extremely maneuverable if I shift my weight. I know absolutely nothing about dialing in boards and bushings and where you're supposed to put them. Obviously, I did my reading and research and everything. A complete pack of bushings is about $60, and at $60 a pop for a set of bushings, I'm not going to be doing a whole lot of experimenting with these bushings. So I think I'm just going to rock this board the way that it is. Maybe one day if I get to ride somebody else's board and I really like it, I'll see what their bushing setup is. But I'm not going to be doing a lot of mixing and matching with bushings. I do have a couple of other sets of wheels. I may experiment a little bit with putting street wheels back on this thing. But honestly, I really like it as it is, the way that it is. All in all, this would probably not be my first choice for using as a commuter board. If I was going to go do a lot of riding downtown in DC, or if I had to actually use this board to get from place to place, just because this board can get a little bit sketchy. I think this board requires a little bit more skill to ride, and ever since getting this board, I've really been doing a lot of work to actually get better at riding, and I've gotten a lot better. So this is a challenging board to ride, but it's also, once you actually master this board, it's a very, very rewarding board to ride. And with that, I think my last thought about this board, obviously I'm going to reiterate, please, please, please always wear your helmet if you're considering getting an electric board. These things are not toys. I will put these things in the same category as guns or motorcycles. You can have tons of fun on these things, but they can be very dangerous if you don't respect what they are, respect the power, and respect the danger. So, you know, you could hurt yourself. You could hurt people around you if you're not responsible with these things. So always ride these things responsibly. These are not toys for kids. And make sure you get your skills up on these things. And I know that I'm definitely not going to take this board out in the public in particular until I get really confident on it. I have a couple of other boards that I'm going to ride around for other purposes. But I really like this one for what it is. And I would recommend this to somebody who's basically, you know, a fairly experienced rider. Now, speed-wise on these boards, you know, just because of the instability issues and, you know, the trucks being super loose and the board being ultra carvy for maneuverability, people with similar style boards, you'll never see them doing top speed runs on YouTube. I actually did get brave or stupid, whichever you want to call it, and I actually topped this board out. So this board will actually do 27 miles an hour. So speed-wise, very, very fast board. Very plenty fast for you to definitely hurt yourself. Alright guys, so that's my review of the Halo Beast. This is probably only the second review on YouTube right now of the Halo Beast. I do have a few other boards that I would like to review and share with you guys here on this channel. So definitely leave me some feedback in the comments. Shout out to you, Joe Green, for providing this board to me at an awesome cost. Appreciate you very much. And that's about it. So we'll catch you guys next time.